Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaban. Welcome to our session. Inshallah ta'ala, this is our 11th session, and I pray that bidnillah it will be of benefit. So last week's session, we looked at the importance of having a forgiving nature. Today, what we'll be looking at is being deliberate, being careful and deliberate, having that within our nature. So, bidnillah, we know the opening ayah, the ayah that we use, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that we have sent you only as a mercy for the universe, for all of mankind, regardless, mankind, all that exists, you have been sent as a mercy. So today, inshallah, the lessons we will take, I'm going to look at 10 instances and lessons we can pull from being careful and deliberate. And I also have added about 2 more in addition to the 10. Then we look at the summary of the lessons. So the first of which we look at is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. It was a deliberate and a strategic decision. Now, as I said before, we won't go too extensively, but some of these I will mention them a little because I know that it's not as familiar to everyone. But then the most important thing, what lessons can we take and apply within our lives? So the first one, the treaty itself, it appeared disadvantageous. So for example, for those of us who are familiar with the treaty, how it went was that when the Muslims were evicted from where they were living, the treaty that was signed was that if somebody leaves from your town and come where the Muslims are, then the Muslims must return them, right? They must be returned safely. However, if the Muslims go to Mecca, and then they can stay. So whoever leaves from Medina to Mecca, whoever leaves, then that person can stay. However, if somebody is sent, even if it is a Muslim, even if it's a Muslim leaving from your town and comes in Medina, they must be returned. And remember, must be returned meaning that they will be tortured. So it is known that they will be tortured. So if they escape, and this is what we have to understand, if the Muslim escape and comes to the safety of other Muslims, then the treaty said that we have to return that Muslim and their torture will continue. So this is something, it seems very disadvantageous. But one of the lessons we can take from this is that we always have to weigh the short-term sacrifices against long-term benefit. So it's important for us to look at the short-term sacrifices. Sacrifices were made. The treaty seemed disadvantageous, but in the long term, peace agreements were brokered, that when Islam was spread, at that time, the conquest of Mecca, no blood was shed. So this just shows that short-term sacrifices generally leads to long-term benefit. So this was a strategic decision-making, and it leads to great success. So it leads to immense success, even if the immediate outcome is unfavorable. So this is one of the lessons we have to take from this particular incident, is that sometimes we have to make sacrifices in order to benefit in the long term and understand that success will come even though the immediate outcome, what you are seeing now in front of you, seems very unfavorable. The second is him sending scouts before the hijrah. So many of us are familiar when he sent Mus'ab bin Umar radiallahu anhu to prepare the community, to teach them Islam and to build alliances. Now, this was deliberate preparation because what it was doing was ensuring smooth transition for the Muslims to establish a strong base in Medina. So we're familiar with this when he sent Mus'ab ibn Umayr radiallahu anh, and he constantly gave dawah one by one, one by one. Again, a lesson that we can take and apply within our lives. We must take proactive steps and plan carefully before we undertake any significant action. This is a means for us to ensure success and stability. So this is another lesson we can take. Be proactive, plan carefully, right? Before you're making any significant decision, before you're going to make a big leap or a big step, be proactive, plan carefully, and it's much more likely for one to be successful and, of course, ensure some level of stability. The third is the digging of the trench in the Battle of Ahzab. So that example, again, some of us are familiar, but this was where he digged the trench as a strategy. The Prophet ﷺ, he actually consulted the companions about the strategy. What's the best strategy to defend against attack? Because he knew that they were going to attack them. Now he adopted this novel tactic of digging a trench around the city a move that caught the enemies off guard. Because if he dug a trench around the city, then they couldn't enter. So it would have been difficult because then they would end up falling in the trench. And then, of course, there would be persons there to defend themselves if they were in the trench. So this was a novel tactic that was used, and it ensured that no war was fought, that the Muslims remained safe in their town. Again, what lesson? Always consult. Because sometimes you may be, yes, we believe, a lot of the time we believe that we are the smartest in the crowd. But it's important to consult because persons may come up with novel ideas that you've never thought about. So consultation is critical, a lesson that we can take, even if you're the leader. So even as a prophet, even as someone getting revelation, he still consulted his companions. So it's important for us, regardless of our position, regardless of where we are, who we are, the crowd we're with, consultation is important and careful planning, and it leads to innovative solutions in challenging situations. The fourth I'd like to mention is him choosing not to punish the munafiq in Medina. So he knew that Abdullah bin Ubay, he knew that this person was going around spreading mischief, was going around starting even battles, starting a lot of feud, telling this tribe that, you know what, this tribe did this to yours. That person that died, that person didn't die. It was actually that other one that killed them. And he did this for over 10 years nonstop. This what he just constantly did this, despite his constant betrayal and slander. The Prophet ﷺ, he knew that this person created a lot of problems, but he never considered deciding that, look, give him the death penalty, let's punish him, because he feared that this would create even more division and harm the community. This is careful decision making. Unnecessary conflict was what he was trying to prevent and maintain unity. And we even see this. This is something that we see with Musa alayhi salam, Moses, peace be upon him. When Aaron, when they built the golden calf, when Musa alayhi salam came and he said to him, he asked, why did you allow them to build a golden calf to worship it? And you know that idolatry is not permitted. They should only worship God. Harun alayhi salam said something and Musa alayhi salam kept quiet. He said that I didn't want to create division. I understood that unity is important, and the only way we'll be able to correct them if they're all united. So he chose that let them be one group, so that when Musa alayhi salam come, he will fix the situation. But he didn't want, the reason why he didn't tell them that, look, here what, let's stop this, this cannot be tolerated, because he knew that they'll be divided, persons would be splintered. When Musa alayhi salam came, he would only have a few. The group would have been split, and then of course, they would have been disunited. When Harun alayhi salam saw the importance and mentioned that, Musa alayhi salam said nothing else. He said nothing else. He was so upset, so fuming that why are you allowing them to worship a golden calf? Oh God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down food for them from the heavens. He has parted the sea for them. He has done so much for them, and they are worshiping a calf that they made, a cow that they made out of gold. But what stopped him was when Harun alayhi salam said, I understand the importance of unity. I know it is wrong, but I didn't want you to come and see a disunited group. I know you will fix it, but I wanted to ensure that the group maintained unity. So another lesson we can take from this, exercise patience and consider the broader impact of our actions on the community. Before we take drastic actions, before we say we're upset, we want to take disciplinary measures, we want to ostracize people. Before we do that, exercise patience and consider the broader impact of our actions. The fifth is assigning leaders during expedition. The Prophet ﷺ, he was very meticulous in choosing capable leaders from military expeditions and even administrative tasks. For example, when it came to military tasks, he would select Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. When it came to teaching the deen, he would select Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anhu. A lesson we can take, he was very meticulous in who he chose for the task. What lesson we can take? Delegate responsibilities wisely. Not because it's a friend, not because it's somebody with a particular degree, somebody that you know is old and should be wise. Delegate responsibilities wisely. Consider people's skills and strengths. That's the only way we're going to get effective outcome. So this is general within our lives. Delegate responsibilities wisely. Consider the skills of people and their strengths, not just because somebody is a Muslim, somebody's your friend, somebody's in a particular crowd. No, delegate responsibly. That's the only way to get effective outcome. Number 6, preparing for the conquest of Mecca. So the example, subhanAllah, the example for this is before the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ kept his plans confidential to avoid alerting the Quraysh. He kept it confidential to avoid alerting the Quraysh. He also ordered a peaceful entry into the city, demonstrating strategic planning, why he wanted to minimize bloodshed. And subhanAllah, there was no bloodshed when he entered. Not one person. There was no fight. When he entered, then the conquest occurred. A lesson that we must take: thoughtful planning and discretion. Thoughtful planning and discretion can ensure success and minimize harm in sensitive situations. So thoughtful planning and discretion, it can ensure success and minimize harm in sensitive situations. Number 7, seeking counsel before the Battle of Badr. Many of us are familiar with this. Again, Prophet ﷺ companions, he consulted them about whether to engage in battle. He valued their input, and he only proceeded after gaining unanimous support. Many times we have an idea and we just want people to go along with it. He ensured that they supported it, and he only proceeded to go ahead when he saw the unanimous support, showing deliberation and collective decision making. So again, I repeat the lesson: engage others in consultation. Always consult to ensure well-rounded decisions, and that reflects collective wisdom. So that concept of collective wisdom, yes, you might be smart, you might be wise, but collective wisdom goes a long way because, and we know the saying, a lot of the time, two heads better than one, right? So it's very, very important that we try our best to consult. Yes, we know, we believe we have the best route, but sometimes people have some novel ideas that we've never thought about, more efficient ways, more effective ways. So consultation is key to success. Number 8, when he avoided confrontation during the incident of Ta'if. I mentioned this incident, so I'll take the lesson that I want to take from it. We mentioned this in a previous session. The lesson: we must respond with patience and restraint in the face of hostility. So even when people are hostile to us, respond with patience and restraint. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when somebody attacks you, when somebody hurts you, somebody does wrong, somebody says wrong things, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. Return with ahsan, something that is better. And what did Allah say is the result? فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Which means that that person who had that animosity with you, that person who had that enmity with you, perchance they will become waliyun hamim, a very close ally. If you constantly exercise that level, it is possible. We're not saying 100% that everybody will, but it is possible, it is likely that that person will actually change based on how you respond. Number 9, drafting the Constitution of Medina. The Prophet ﷺ, when he arrived in Medina, he actually established the Constitution of Medina, which outlined the rights and responsibilities of Muslims, Jews, and all the other groups that were in the city. Now, this actually reflected his careful approach to building a harmonious and cooperative society. He understood there were different religious groups, there were different tribes, so he ensured that he established a constitution, that there would be a harmonious society, and everybody would be cooperative. Again, the lesson for us to take. And the lessons I'm pulling is lessons specific to being careful and deliberate. There are numerous lessons from each of these incidents, but since that's the topic we're doing, I want to focus on lessons specific to that. So again, establish clear guidelines and agreements to maintain peace and fairness in diverse communities. If you have diverse communities, ensure you have clear guidelines and agreements to maintain peace and fairness within the diverse communities. And number 10, handling revelation gradually. We know the Prophet ﷺ, we know he received and conveyed the Quran over 23 years. And over 23 years, bit by bit, persons learned. This ensured that the teachings of the Quran were absorbed and implemented gradually by the community. This method, it allowed for careful education and the steady development of Islamic principles. So what's the lesson we can take? The lesson we can take is approach significant tasks gradually and methodically. So approach significant tasks gradually and methodically, allowing people time to adjust and implement changes effectively. So that's the lesson. And I've summarized the lessons so that it's easy, similar. I think this is a good point. So the gradual and methodically. So piecemeal, right? Bite sizes. So that's one of the lessons we can take from this particular incident. Something is big, something is significant, approach it gradually and methodically. So it allows time to adjust and you'll be much more effective. So those are the top 10. But there are two other incidents I really wanted to refer to. So I'll mention these other instances. Number one, approaching Salah. When it comes to time for Salah, even time to pray, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said something. So sometimes when you're going at the masjid, whatever it is, and we're rushing, the Prophet ﷺ said something. When the prayer is established, when it begins, meaning that you're going to the masjid, or even if you're at home and the father starts praying, even if you're at home, he said, do not come to it racing. Instead, come to it walking. Meaning there must be tranquility even approaching Salah, even approaching the prayer. And there should be upon you an air of peace and tranquility. Then whatever part you catch, pray. So if you miss some part of it, whatever you miss, complete it. So don't rush. Ensure that you enter prayer with a level of peace and tranquility. So even in Salah, we have to be careful and deliberate in our approach. On another occasion, he said, when the Salah is established, meaning when the final call for prayer is made, do not stand up until you see me come out for the Salah. I mean, don't rush it. Don't rush it. So if the leader is there, wait until the leader comes out before you stand up to start. Because you don't want to preempt the leader. Just relax and be careful in your approach. Another one was with regards to offensive strike. Prophet Salam, we mentioned that many of the times when the enemy would attack and he would respond in the morning. One of the things he would do is to determine whether the adhan was called. So if the adhan was called, then he knew that this is a Muslim. And we see where he said, Kharajta min an-nar. When he heard the person say the call in the adhan, he said, you have been emancipated from the nar, from the hellfire. An additional note I wanted to look at is the Prophet ﷺ said something. He said, having a good appearance, mean being clean, well-groomed, etc., deliberateness and moderation are together 1/24th part of prophethood. So having a good appearance, mean being clean, well-groomed, deliberate, and being moderate, all of these together is a portion of prophethood. So this quality of being deliberate and careful, it is good in everything, right? So it is good in everything except for matters pertaining to the akhirah. After all, we know as Muslims, we sabiqu ila maghfiratin min rabbikum. We race towards the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we race to do is good deeds. So we try to do as much good deeds as possible. But generally in our day-to-day actions, be careful, be deliberate, and don't rush. So let's summarize the lessons before we look at the other two pointers. Being careful and deliberate. Summary of the lessons. I've summarized the 12 points into 8, inshallah. So number one, weigh short-term and long-term outcomes before making decisions. So weigh short-term and long-term outcomes before making decisions. Two, plan and prepare proactively for significant actions or transitions. So plan and prepare proactively for significant actions or transitions. Number three, consult with others to ensure well-rounded and effective solutions. Delegate tasks wisely, assigning roles to those best suited for them. Minimize harm and prioritize unity in challenging situations. Exercise patience and restraint, especially in the face of hostility or provocation. Establish clear agreements to promote harmony and mutual understanding, and implement changes gradually. Implement changes gradually to ensure effective adoption and sustainability. So that's the major part. So there are two more things we know that remain, Bismillah. One is the weak buster. So one of them, the Pledge of Allegiance at Bait Ridwan under the tree, was because of the rumor of Uthman's death, radiallahu anh. Now there was a rumor that Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh had been murdered. And there's a narration that says the reason why this pledge was done was because of the rumor of Uthman's death. Now, of course, This is weak. Sheikh Al-Albani has mentioned that this is weak. They are authentic hadith regarding the Pledge of Allegiance, but this particular instance that it was done because of a rumor that he was murdered, this is a weak narration. The second narration is one where it says that Ali radiallahu anh, he shielded himself with the door of Khaybar, meaning it was from the fort of Khaybar, and they said that he used it as a shield, and even men, if a lot of men came together, they couldn't carry it. All of them together could not have lifted up that. No, that is a weak narration. There are many authentic narrations regarding the prowess, regarding the courage, regarding the strength of Ali radiallahu anh, but this particular incident is a weak narration that this, yes, he used the door of Khaybar, but this statement that mentioned that it was so heavy that numerous men couldn't lift it up altogether, then this is a weak narration. And the third was there's a narration that says that Ali radiallahu anh was born inside the Kaaba. There is no such thing. This is also a weak narration. He was not born inside the Kaaba. There was actually only one individual who was born inside the Kaaba from the authentic narrations in this, I believe, is in Sahih Muslim. So let me just confirm that. Regarding, so this one. Yes, so there's one authentic narration regarding Hakim bin Hizam radiallahu anh. Hakim bin Hizam was the only one reported to have been born inside the Kaaba, but Ali radiallahu anh was not born inside the Kaaba. And the last particular point, and this one inshallah is split over 3 weeks, is the Sahih reinforcer. Salama radiallahu anha, she said that An-Najashi said to them, do you have with you anything which he brought from Allah? This is speaking about the Prophet. He was inquiring. Ja'far radiallahu anh recited to him a passage from Surah Maryam. So he recited a section of Surah Maryam. And by Allah, An-Najashi wept until his beard was soaked, and his bishops also wept until their books became wet when they heard he recited to them. Then An-Najashi said, these words and what Musa alayhi salam brought came from the same lamp. So An-Najashi, who we know was the Christian king, he said these words and the words of Moses, peace be upon him, they came from the same lamp. He said, pass on, you have been rightly guided. Then he addressed the two persons who came for them to be evicted. He said, by Allah, we will never hand them over to you, and I will not give you any satisfaction. Salma radiallahu anha said, when we left his presence, Amr bin al-As, because there were two of them, Amr bin al-As said, by Allah, tomorrow I shall return to him and tell him something that will turn them all upside down. I shall certainly tell him that they claim the God he worships, Isa bin Maryam, is only a slave of Allah. And she said, Salama said that Abdullah bin Rabi'ah, he was more reasonable. And he said, don't do it. Even if they have opposed us, they are related to us and have certain rights over us. But Amr insisted, by Allah, I will do it. Next week, inshallah ta'ala, I will continue the narration where he did it the next day and what was the response of An-Najashi, bidnillah. So inshallah ta'ala, I would like to conclude with this particular phrase, and then I'll open the floor for a minute or so if there are any questions or clarification. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, he made it clear to his companions that Allah loves the quality of carefulness and deliberateness. He once said to Al-Ashaj radiallahu anh, he said, Inna fika خصلتين يحبكما الله الحلم والأنات, that verily in you are two qualities that Allah loves. Verily in you are two qualities that Allah loves. Al-hilm, forbearing, being careful, like Halim, that forbearing, being careful, and wal-anata, and deliberateness, being deliberate, being cautious, being ensuring that you plan carefully and then you execute. So this he mentioned that these are two qualities that Allah loves. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala minhum. May Allah make us apply these qualities and implement these qualities very easily and be sincere in our actions to him in everything that we do. وَجَزَاكُمُ khairan kathiran. So inshallah ta'ala, I will open the floor for a minute or so, and then we will end the session bi'idhnillah. So if there is any questions or clarification, then the floor is open. If not, then we will end now, inshallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So if there are no questions or clarification, we will end. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man la yashkuru nas la yashkuru Allah. Whoever does not thank the people does not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَجَزَاكُمُ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. May Allah reward you all immensely. Shukran jazilan. Thank you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa